Welcome to Mr. 96's Pop Reviews. My name is Mr. 96. For those of you who watched my recent worst list, I deeply appreciate the support, so let's send off 2023 with the songs I enjoyed the most. Though that should come with an asterisk, as I'll probably miss or overlook some bangers because that's just what happens with these best lists. Opinions change all the time and are never a set thing, so there are plenty of songs I may have thought were fine when they came out, but become great years after the fact. Hell, the song I just played was an honorable mention last year, but then suddenly grew on me to become fantastic after I already finished the list. Shit just happens. I think this happens more often with my best list than with my worst, because for songs I don't like, I can usually pinpoint what it is that I object to. With songs I like, it often just comes down to, I like it and I can't tell you why. Like in the previous video, here are the guidelines. Top 60 of Hot 100, released no later than August, and cannot be on the 2022 year-end Hot 100 if it's released before September of 2022. But most importantly, this list is completely subjective. All these choices are my personal opinion, meaning you have every right to disagree with me, so I'll respect your opinion as long as you respect mine. In other news, this video marks my 100th episode of Mr. 96's Pop Reviews, so thank you all so much for sticking with me these past 8 years, as 100 seemed like a pipe dream back in college. Like I said before, I can't promise I won't miss a song here, because that's just what happens, so let's enjoy this for what it is as we take a look at the top 10 best hit songs of 2023.
I can buy myself flowers, write my name in the sand, talk to myself for hours, say things you don't understand.
The last couple years have allowed older, lesser-known songs to become hits years after their initial release, so it shouldn't be a surprise that the biggest pop star alive had one of her old album tracks break through.
And it's new, the shape of your body.
In the last year, I've come to appreciate Taylor Swift more for her songwriting abilities, and Cruel Summer is no exception to that. I'm not going to speculate on her love life, as Swifties know the Taylor lore more than I do, but I do want to talk about the general sentiment. The gist of the song is that Taylor had a secret casual fling one summer, but she ended up falling in love with the guy, despite it seeming like it'll probably go poorly. This won't be the most in-depth analysis of this song, but I love the rather sunny vibe of the instrumental because it contrasts how the lyrics are rather pessimistic. Personally, I love when sad songs are sung in a happy manner, like I Could Never Take the Place of Your Man by Prince. And the part that really sealed this song's appeal with me is the bridge, which this song actually has since it was made in 2019 before TikTok shortened every song to 2 minutes.
Said I'm fine, but it wasn't true. I don't wanna keep secrets just to keep you.
Taylor sings with such passion in the bridge, and it parallels how this song is about a summer fling. You can hear her voice bursting with love for the guy, yet it's contrasted by how the lyrics detail her fear of what could come. This track was a fan favorite for years, and Taylor has said that this was her favorite song off of her Lover album. She was actually going to make it a single in 2020, but COVID derailed those plans. Yet here in 2023, 4 years after the song's initial release, it organically became a hit because people just loved it that much. As a result, the song finally became a single in June, and it eventually reached number 1 on the Hot 100 in October. While Cruel Summer may be about a brief fling, its staying power and longevity are as genuine as can be.
I love you, that's the worst thing you ever. Talk to myself for hours, say things you don't understand.
There are artists who are critically acclaimed and get glowing praise from everyone, including plenty of my colleagues on this platform. But for me, it's tough when I'm not in the same boat, as I end up feeling like an idiot for not feeling the same way. For example, Adele. Now, I have massive respect for her as an artist, as her talent is undeniable, but I'd be lying if I said I enjoyed listening to her, as her music just isn't my thing. Fellow music reviewers absolutely love her, but I never found myself listening to any of her songs in my free time. Like I said, it has nothing to do with her talent, as it was just a matter of her style not being what I enjoy. So I'm glad to say that today I actually do agree with other people in really liking a song by a critical darling.
I used to float, now I just fall down.
In many ways, Billie Eilish has been my modern day Adele in that she's lauded by the music industry as well as other reviewers on YouTube, but I never found myself totally loving her music despite recognizing her amazing skill. So even this song was one I avoided for a while because I initially had no interest, but I eventually saw the Barbie movie in late September, and during the credits was this new Billie Eilish song, and in that moment, I understood the hype.
I don't know how to feel.
In the context of the movie, this melancholic tune is a great way to end it, as it's used to highlight Barbie's journey of finding her purpose in the real world, but for Billie, it's a song about her and her own doubts. In an interview with Allure by Arabelle Siccardi, Billie mentions how she and her brother Phineas wrote the song when they were in a creative rut, as they had a moment where they asked themselves, why are we even doing this? Billie Eilish makes a lot of relatable music for young girls, but that quote is the most I've ever related to her, as I've had those moments all the time, both in my personal life as well as related to this channel. So for me, this song was just what I needed to hear. As someone who's been struggling to find work, many days go by where I constantly ask myself what I'm doing with my life. Honestly, 2023 was a big year for me in that I got to focus on this channel after slacking off the previous 3 years. I even took a songwriting class last June, which allowed me to gain more confidence in my abilities on this channel. I've always felt a bit out of touch when discussing Billie Eilish, but this song worked for me in a way I could empathize with, as it speaks to a level of self-doubt that I've been feeling myself. So for that, she did a damn good job. Highly recommend it.
Something I'm made for. Talking myself for hours. Say things you don't understand.
On a similar topic of critically acclaimed artists, I often feel uncomfortable talking about ones with such devoted fan bases because those people often act like their favorite artist can do no wrong. So whenever those people ask why I didn't include a song from that artist, I just ignore them entirely to avoid any risk of being bombarded by stans. So thankfully that won't be the case here.
I feel like falling in love. I'm in the mood to fuck something up.
Modern day Beyonce has been a blind spot for me because it's almost as if everyone just worships her as a literal goddess to where anything but overwhelming praise will be seen as heresy. I'll be frank, I'm literally afraid to talk about her. I mentioned how there are songs that I regret not putting on last year's list, like Bad Habit, but another song a lot of people seem to love that I didn't include was Beyonce's Break My Soul. However, unlike with Bad Habit, my thoughts on Break My Soul are still the same today, and that the song is fine, but nothing special.
Oh, baby, baby, you won't break my soul. You won't break my soul.
While the song is musically excellent in how it uses the hallmarks of house, my biggest problem is that the lyrics are so un-Beyonce-like that I can't suspend my disbelief. She has spent her entire life talking about how awesome she is, yet now I'm supposed to believe she's just some everyday working class woman? You know what? No. Beyonce is many things, but a regular citizen, she is not. But Beyonce singing a funky song about falling in love and fucking shit up? I totally buy that. And her performance in Cuff It reminds me a lot of her hits from the 2000s.
Got me looking so crazy right now. Your love's got me looking so crazy right now.
One thing people seem to forget about Beyonce was that she was a singles artist that made radio hits back in the day. Nowadays, people see her as this secretive R&B album artist, but in 2003, she was a former pop group vocalist with a budding solo career similar to Justin Timberlake at the same time. I think the last decade of Self-Titled and Lemonade have turned Beyonce into this larger-than-life personality whose mere presence resembles that of a deity demanding worship. And with her moodier songs used as a possible preview into her love life, I've heard the word queen used to describe her way more than the word artist or singer. So with her Renaissance album leaning more into house, disco, dance, etc., it reminded me, oh right, Beyonce makes popular music, and she's really good at it.
We gon' fuck up the night. Black lights, spaceships fly.
Cuff It sticks the landing with the legendary Nile Rodgers on guitar, and it manages to be an ode to black music while still being a Beyonce song. For me, it's just nice to talk about Beyonce as a musician again rather than as a celebrity. Good stuff.
Spaceships fly. Fuck it up, fuck it up.
Talking myself for hours. Say things you don't understand.
I didn't point this out in my last video, but I recently got a new Blackpink poster. After going to their concert in San Francisco last August, I felt it was only right to get a poster of them. It fits incredibly well for this channel since we review pop music, but I also wanted to replace my Wonder Woman poster because I felt like it didn't represent who I am today. Have you heard of superhero fatigue? Yeah, when every big event is just another superhero project, you just get burnt out and don't want anything to do with it. The MCU is the worst because you have to do so much homework to follow this never-ending cycle. There are only a few exceptions that I follow nowadays because I just think they're good projects in general. One of them is Matt Reeves' The Batman, and the other is the Spider-Verse movies.
Just to save you, I give all of me. Yeah, I can hear you screaming out, calling me.
This is the most popular of the songs from the soundtrack to Across the Spider-Verse. In many ways, it's the signature track, seeing as it has Sway Lee, just like Sunflower did for Into the Spider-Verse, but if I'm being honest, I think Calling is much better. Personally, I was always kind of meh on Sunflower, as it's breezy and heartwarming to fit an origin story, but it's not one I'd want to listen to often as I get the idea in the first minute. Calling is a much more somber song about longing for someone else who's far away. In addition, Across the Spider-Verse is a spacey and emotionally complex film where every frame and color matches the emotions on screen, so Calling exemplifies how different this film is from its predecessor. When I think of the film, I'm not actually thinking of the beautifully animated action sequences. I'm thinking of the emotional moments from Miles, Gwen, or both. And I hear Sway Lee's voice when I think of the darker shades in the illustrations.
Ain't no way you going back to Cardi's. And I splurge on her, she like saying around me. See me out in public, hardly.
Sway Lee really is the standout vocalist on this track. Nav's verse is okay, but A Boogie with the Hoodie's verse is pretty good, and this spacey Metro Boomin instrumental sets a very down-to-earth yet surreal vibe. One thing I love about the Spider-Verse movies is that they get to lean more into hip-hop than other superhero properties. I mean, Kendrick Lamar did the soundtrack for Black Panther, but that always felt like an odd choice as it didn't match Ludwig Göransson's score in the movie, which was made for an African setting. With Spider-Verse, Miles Morales is from the streets of Brooklyn, and Metro Boomin nails this soundtrack because it fits the tone of the film and isn't just a jukebox collection of pop songs forced into the movie by an executive. Calling is a song that would not work for a Peter Parker film. It's a tune made for a Black Spider-Man in all the best ways, and I'm glad we've reached a point where anyone can be Spider-Man. Metro Boomin and Sway Lee better come back for Beyond Spider-Verse.
Talk to myself for hours. Say things you don't understand.
People often have nostalgia for the time they grew up in, but unlike most people who act like their childhood was the best time ever, I'm someone who's able to recognize the faults of every era. It's partly why my main series is all about 2000s music. And in 2023, when any song from any era can suddenly become popular, I was particularly interested in hearing a previously unreleased song from 20 years prior.
Just a scar somewhere down inside of me.
This year was the 20th anniversary of Linkin Park's second album, Meteora, so to celebrate, the band released a 20th anniversary edition of Meteora with plenty of bonus tracks, and this song, Lost, was a song that was cut from the original release. With hindsight of lead singer Chester Bennington's death, it gives a lot more perspective about the kind of music Linkin Park made, especially in 2003. Though as much as I found this enjoyable as someone who grew up with Linkin Park, I'd be lying if I said this was my favorite track of theirs. Meteora had classic songs that stick with me to this day, like Somewhere I Belong, Faint, Numb, and Breaking the Habit. While Lost definitely sounds like something from that same era, I can sort of see why it was left off the original release. The song has the signifiers of their nu metal days, but it doesn't go heavy into the rock aspect during the verses. It's much more of an album track that relies on synth and turntables, having the tone of Numb with the more subdued music style of Breaking the Habit. But with that being said, I think that's also what makes it sound good even 20 years later, as it was a song that embodied Linkin Park's future rather than their past.
I'm lost in these memories.
As much as people are often nostalgic for the nu metal days of their first two albums in Hybrid Theory and Meteora, what truly allowed the band to evolve past that dated genre when their contemporaries could not was their writing and musical sensibilities. If you listen to the electronic sounding production, you could tell these aspects would influence their later work, as it's the same kind of production you heard on their Living Things album in 2012. So would I put Lost in the pantheon of Linkin Park classics? No, but what makes it work is that it ironically relates more to Linkin Park as we know them now than it probably did back in '03. In that regard, this was a smart move by the band to bring this out of the vault 20 years later. It demonstrates why Linkin Park managed to outlive their peers, both in relevance as well as legacy.
Talk to myself for hours. Say things you don't understand.
This section will be pretty quick since it mostly revisits points brought up in previous segments, but one thing I like in all media is a good credits theme, and this one, wonderful.
Not done fighting. I don't feel I lose.
This is the credits theme to Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, which, if I didn't make it clear before, is a fantastic movie, and this song captures the tone of the film so well. I mentioned how Billie Eilish's song captured the tone of Barbie well, but that also comes with the context that it's meant to contrast the bright aesthetic of the rest of the film. With Am I Dreaming, it captures Spider-Verse to a T.
Waking up, feeling like the thankful one. Count up my ones, lacing up my favorite ones.
A$AP Rocky provides a solid verse where he talks about his upbringing, which matches Miles Morales more than I expected, as Rocky is from New York himself. Yes, he's from Harlem, not Brooklyn, but considering how much New York hip-hop has declined in the 21st century, I'm giving him this one. But what really makes this song stand out to me, other than the tight Metro Boomin beat, is the orchestral strings, which give both a sense of calm as well as contemplation. Royce has an eerie voice that really emphasizes the dreaminess in the title, and the way her vocals are layered allow the music to drive the tune and simulate a heartbeat. Considering the movie's finale doesn't exactly tie up all loose ends, to put it lightly, this spiritual sounding song is a rather fitting conclusion to an emotionally driven film. And with that, I don't have much else to say. Beautiful ending theme for a beautiful movie.
I feel beaten, but I can't give up.
Talk to myself for hours. Say things you don't understand.
Usually with songs, I try to decipher what they specifically do to capture my interests, but for this one, I'm not exactly going to analyze it and will instead just share with you a personal story. With this artist, I was always able to respect her from a technical perspective, but no song of hers truly connected with me on a deep level. However, that all changed after a specific chain of events this year.
It's me. Hi, I'm the problem. It's me.
Despite Taylor Swift being the biggest pop star on earth, I feel like I've never been able to get a clear grasp of how I feel about her music. Her writing seems so detailed and intricate to where I was honestly overwhelmed at trying to understand her. Despite the fact that I have this YouTube channel where I review pop music, I felt so ill-equipped to tackle Antihero as I had never written a song myself, so I felt unqualified to talk about her. Well, this past spring, I took a songwriting course at a local community college and had to write and perform an original song for my final project. I struggled to find decent ideas for songs, so instead of writing about love or romance like everyone else, since I can't exactly relate, I decided to simply ask myself, what am I feeling right now? At the time, I had recently unpacked a lot of trauma from when I was bullied in grad school 4 years prior, so once I zeroed in on that emotion, the words just suddenly came to me. In under 2 weeks, I wrote a 4-minute, 72-line rap about my experience at Santa Clara University, and to my surprise, my classmates enjoyed it as they said the lyrics were the best part, which caught me off guard since I had never written lyrics before. I bring this up because for my first song ever, I managed to write all those lines because they came from my emotions and direct experience, and that revelation made me finally realize why Taylor Swift is one of the best songwriters in the world. Antihero is about self-loathing, which I can definitely relate to, and one part I appreciate after my songwriting experience is the bridge where she recounts a crazy dream.
I have this dream, my daughter-in-law kills me for the money. She thinks I left them in the will.
It's the kind of story that sounds so over the top that it had to have been a real dream. That's not something you could just make up and sell convincingly, and it's details like those that make the song feel authentic. As I said, this wasn't exactly a technical analysis of Antihero, but I really felt the best way to analyze a Taylor Swift song was to do what she does and talk about my experience. And doing so allowed me to appreciate Taylor for the true talent she is. Even if you aren't a Swiftie, this song is a true gem that you should all check out on your own.
Talking to myself for hours. Say things you don't understand.
With TikTok being the tastemaker of today, it has led to a lot of old songs or album deep cuts from years ago getting new life and becoming hits a la Cruel Summer. The song I'll be talking about right now is actually one I was already familiar with, but I had only given it a couple listens 5 years ago, as the version I first heard was a cover by the group back there.
If you be the cash, I'll be the rubber band. You be the match, I'm gonna be the fuse. Boom.
Hey, what can I say? They have good taste.
Feeling up the sky, even when the sky gets foggy, even when the sun don't shine.
I'm amazed that a 13-year-old song could become a hit now when it couldn't back then. I mean, for Kate Bush last year, I sort of get it, since that was a song from the UK that didn't cross over in the 80s. But for Miguel, he's a relatively known name in the US R&B scene, yet even after his hit with Mariah Carey in 2013, his earlier songs didn't get a second lease on life. But let's remember the context of when Sure Thing first came out.
'Cause we gon' rock this club, we gon' go all night.
Back in 2010, music was very much about partying in the clubs and heavily relied on electropop production and autotune. Traditional R&B was so out of style that even the so-called king of R&B and Usher made an autotune song with will.i.am about getting turned on by boobies. It was the 5th biggest song of the year. So with that in mind, it makes sense that 2010 and 2011 weren't exactly the best time for neo-soul R&B to gain major radio traction. As I've stated in the past, it takes a few years before the defining traits of a decade start showing up, so it makes sense that 2013 was his breakthrough year as popular music shifted to a grounded and moodier aesthetic that would define the 2010s. When it comes to Sure Thing, I understand that TikTok was the primary reason for its rise to popularity in 2023, but music like this ironically fits the vibe of 2023 much more than 2010. It sounds much closer in tone to something like Bad Habit by Steve Lacy than it does to OMG by Usher. Miguel's subtle but sensual singing makes this such a timeless tune, and the music has a pulsating drum beat that doesn't overwhelm the song but gives it a sense of progression that you wouldn't find in a typical bedroom ballad. As much as I complain that music lately has been pretty unoriginal with lazy samples, what I do appreciate in this TikTok era is giving sleeper hits a second chance at life. Last year was Kate Bush, and this year was Miguel, who deserves the recognition as Sure Thing is as quality as its name implies.
Respect you like a lover.
Talking to myself for hours. Say things you don't understand.
Despite this being number 2, this is going to be my longest segment as it's about half analysis, half rant on a separate topic, but I promise there's a connection. For the song, this is an artist who I wish charted higher here in the States than they do, but I'm glad at least one of their songs charted in the top 60 to be eligible for my list.
I'm super shy, but wait a minute while I make you mine, make you mine.
My relation relationship with New Jeans is strange because everyone around me, such as family members, think they're the best group right now. While I also think they're very good and entertaining, that doesn't necessarily mean everything they make is a banger. For one, they seem to get a lot of sponsorship deals, which I hope they're getting paid properly for, seeing as two of them are still minors, but I could not get behind their blatant Coke Zero song. Also, their Apple ad song ETA was sort of whatever for me, and the unskippable 15-second ads of the song before its actual music video make no sense. But New Jeans have been making waves in the K-pop scene for their rather unique, down-to-earth aesthetic, and many believe they'll usher in the 5th generation of K-pop. When you think about K-pop, you think of gigantic, flashy music videos with rather complex choreography, but when it comes to New Jeans, their appeal is being relatable and down-to-earth, which is reflected in both their color palette and their music. Musically, their style takes influences from a variety of genres like R&B, electropop, and hip-hop. In fact, Super Shy takes a lot of influence from UK garage and drum and bass.
You don't even know my name, dear.
It has a very liquid sound that doesn't overwhelm you, and what I like about the group dynamic is that there are no defined roles for who gets the most lines or whatever. It's just 5 girls who all get to shine in different songs. I think what makes New Jeans cool is that they're so different from everyone else that there hasn't been much stan war from fandoms. When I went to the Blackpink concert last August, I heard multiple people around me talk about New Jeans. For those who don't know, New Jeans are from the label Adore, which is a subsidiary of HYBE, aka the company that BTS made into a staple of the industry. In the same way that BTS stood out from the typical SM, YG, and JYP bands, New Jeans are taking a similar approach, and their aesthetic sort of reminds me of BTS's more down-to-earth tracks. People always assume that liking one band means you have to plant your flag in that camp and hate everyone else, but New Jeans sound so fundamentally different from every other band that no one really thinks of them as the competition. People can like them in addition to other bands because they're a complement, not a substitute. Okay, that's all I have to say about the song itself, but I want to address something else because I've held back on this topic for about a year and need to get it off my chest. In my last best list, one viewer left a comment that I was too biased towards K-pop because I had 2 BTS songs at the top of my list, and his reasoning for why I put those songs there was because he thought I was Korean. Okay, first, I'm not Korean. I don't look Korean, and my last name is not Korean. Second, if you think I only like a song because it's K-pop, you didn't watch the video because those 2 songs were my longest, most in-depth segments, meaning I had plenty of reasons. And what's stranger is that the dude's reasoning for me being biased is, well, I'm Japanese and don't listen to J-pop, so you putting K-pop at the top of the list means you're unnaturally biased. Okay, so by your logic, any Japanese person who likes J-pop is therefore biased, which is supposed to say what exactly? Plus, plenty of Korean people don't listen to K-pop, so there's very little, if any, correlation between ethnicity and music taste. More importantly, you act like I'm biased towards K-pop because I put 2 BTS songs at the top, yet my number 1 was primarily a Coldplay song where BTS were just featured vocalists. So the only K-pop thing about it is the ethnicity of the singers. Have you considered that maybe I like the song because it's really good? Also, how is someone biased when music is inherently subjective? Perhaps you thought I only liked those songs because of their genre and not because of their inherent qualities, but if you actually listen to what I said, those were the longest segments in which I provided context for the lyrics as well as the artists. I'm just gonna say it. That guy's pretty racist. I also had a Bad Bunny song in my top 5, so if I had put it on top, would that make me biased towards Hispanic music? Oh, and last thing, I was actually not as favorable to K-pop as I could have been, because if I had a do-over for last year's best list, I would have put Pink Venom by Blackpink on the list. Yeah, this song took about a year to grow on me, and a lot of that had to do with me going to the awesome concert that I've already mentioned. So in fact, I was actually less generous to K-pop than I should have been, yet he insults my character because I like a genre he doesn't like. If you want to see that level of ignorance, you can find it in the comments section of my 2022 best list. You know, unless he deletes it. Either way, that's my rant. Super Shy is great, let's get back to some music discussion. But before we get to number 1, let's go over some honorable mentions that didn't quite make the list, as well as some ineligible songs that I just wanted to shout out.
Fuck it, it's fine.
Yes, I know that he's my ex, but can't
While I'm not a diehard fan of Olivia Rodrigo, I absolutely respect her as the voice of Gen Z. Anyone who tries to deny that she's the voice of a generation is fooling themselves.
Cold shoulder, closing time. You really need to stay till the sun rose.
I usually don't include country songs in my best list as they're generally not my thing, but I respect this one a lot for its raw storytelling. I can see why Zach Bryan is the new rising star, and I've always liked Casey Musgraves, so her getting a #1 hit is well deserved.
Can I get a kiss? And can you make it last forever?
I've always been sort of an outsider to Tyler the Creator, so oftentimes I feel unequipped to talk about him. But I thought this was a neat listen while I was on vacation in Hawaii.
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday week.
The song itself is pretty basic, as Jungkook just wants to fuck this girl 7 days a week, but for what it is, it works. It also briefly stopped Try That in a Small Town from reaching #1 for a week, so I respect the effort despite Jason Aldean getting there eventually.
I give a second chance to Cupid. No need to make it your stupid.
I sincerely wish these 4 girls the best because if you didn't know, 50/50 is practically done. After their massive lawsuit where they plus their producer Sion sued their label Attract, Seo, Aran, and Sena have been terminated from their contracts, and the only reason Kina stayed with the company is because she found out Sion secretly reduced her copyright shares, leading her to withdraw from the lawsuit. It's just an ugly situation all around, as no one had the girls' best interests in mind. The 3 will probably be blacklisted from the industry, and Kina likely came back because this is the only way to salvage her career. It's crazy that they're now finding 3 new members because 50/50 are the first ever Korean girl group to make the year-end Hot 100 at number 44. Yet Cupid will sadly be their only hit with the OG4. Please keep the girls in your thoughts as they didn't deserve to be manipulated by a shitty producer and the idol industry. But with that out of the way, let's talk about a few songs that aren't eligible for this list, but are ones I personally listened to this year.
Until you open it, you cannot know.
This is the credits theme to the Future Redeemed DLC story for Xenoblade Chronicles 3. I'm censoring the footage because the credits contain spoilers for the series, but this song is absolutely beautiful. Yasunori Mitsuda got Joanne Hogg, who sang the credits themes for Xenogears and Xenosaga Episode 1, to come back for this DLC, and it's a perfect send-off for the Xenoblade trilogy. Play these games if you haven't.
Oh my god, yes on that. I was really hoping that he will come through.
This song definitely should have charted higher on the Hot 100 than number 76. It's weird because New Jeans' R&B sound should totally fit in with the American pop scene, but I guess America still sees anything with Asian people as too exotic. A shame since this song is great.
How many? Fast forward.
For artists whom I got into in 2023, Joan So-mi is a huge standout. She has a fantastic story as she left JYP Entertainment to join the YG hip-hop subsidiary, The Black Label, and she's made a name for herself as a solo artist in an industry full of groups and stans. This song is one I enjoyed a lot. But finally, it's time we talk about the best this year had to offer.
Talk to myself for hours. Say things you don't understand.
I love plot twists in any kind of media, which is ironic because when it comes to me in real life, I am a very predictable person. So despite this being #1, it won't be as long of a segment as my #1 from my worst list. What can I say? I like Dua Lipa.
Watch me.
Dance the night away.
Just like how Across the Spider-Verse had 2 songs on this list, the Barbie movie has 2 as well, but even before I saw that movie, this song was already one I love because it is great. The Barbie soundtrack was composed by Mark Ronson of Uptown Funk fame, who also did some of the film's scoring. And this isn't his first time working with Dua Lipa, as she sang the vocals for Electricity by Mark's supergroup with Diplo, Silk City.
Give it to you. And even if I could, I wouldn't turn on you.
Electricity was a fantastic song that deserves so much more fame in the US, so I'm glad those 2 got another chance with Dance the Night. The Wikipedia says Mark Ronson worked on Dua Lipa's hit song IDGAF, but I couldn't verify that as no source I could find mentions him on that song. Anyways, with Future Nostalgia being a massive success for Dua Lipa, I was curious as to how her new retro sound would mesh with Mark Ronson, the retro man himself, but I also had other reasons for wanting to hear a new Dua Lipa song. When it came to her newer stuff after the original release of Future Nostalgia, I was beginning to worry that she was going downhill. I wasn't really into We're Good, and Sweetest Pie completely sucked last year, so thankfully it should come as no surprise that Mark Ronson and Dua Lipa on a disco track work incredibly well together.
Lately, I've been moving close to the edge, still be looking my best.
While the instrumental has the hallmark orchestral strings of disco, it also has an underrated bass line that adds some funk and groove that prevents the tune from becoming too lightweight and cheesy. For years, I've talked about how I like that Dua Lipa has a deeper voice than most female pop stars, so when she sang the post-chorus that comes after the second chorus, I knew this song would be high on the list.
When my heart breaks, when my world shakes.
As much as I can appreciate those who can hit the really high notes like Mariah Carey or Ariana Grande, it's the more subtle vocal performances that I typically enjoy the most, as it provides some grounding to the tune. It provides this bubblegum tune a touch of reality, which also matches the premise of the movie. Back in 2015, I fell off of Uptown Funk fairly quickly because it was so musically aggressive to where you just felt exhausted after the 100th listen. But while Dance the Night hooks you in immediately with the strings, it's the subtle performances like Dua singing and the understated bass line that allow you to appreciate the song as a whole. By the way, I saw the Barbie movie 2 months after it premiered and didn't follow any press, so I didn't know that Dua Lipa was actually in the film itself. Yeah, the moment when Mermaid Barbie showed up, I got jump scared because it just caught me off guard. But even though her character was in the movie for maybe 15 seconds, Dua Lipa's true shining moment was with this song. It restored my faith in her music output, and it was a perfect match with Mark Ronson, making Dance the Night the #1 best hit song of 2023.
I could dance, I could dance, I could dance, dance tonight.
For those of you new to my channel, I'm glad you could stick around. If you also want to help suggest 2,000 songs for me to review, you can join my wonderful patrons on Patreon. For just $1 per video, you can join my patron-only Discord server where we chat and chill, and at $2 per video, you get to vote on what songs I review for my series 2000s Childhood Pop. At $5 per video, you get to be listed in my Names of Fame, and at $10 per video, you get a personal shout to the heart along with Casey Vellante, Jason Semler, and Prideful Zella. For my patrons watching this around release, you can click the link below to help vote on what song I'll review for the next patron-voted 2000s Childhood Pop episode. Once again, I'm Mr. 96. If you want to see more pop reviews, click the subscribe button below and tap that bell to be notified when I drop a new episode. Next will be the top 5 most average hit songs of 2023, which will kick off season 10 of my pop reviews. Thank you all for the 100 episodes. Pop songs may come in numbers, but there's only one. 96.
너의 그 말, 그 잔인한 말, 가슴 아픈 말, 칼날 같은 말, 너의 그 말, 그 잔인한